Hello class, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about how to do our assignment. Right? So it's assignment 2 for Blackboard. What we're doing is based on the chapter 1 reading and on the lecture for chapter 1. So all the previous lecture videos are extremely important to this. So this is essentially a field project where you're going out and you're doing field work. You're practicing at doing the research steps as kind of a little mini research project, and I'm going to guide you through what you need to do. So the very first thing you need to do is select a topic. Then we'll be creating our hypothesis, choosing a research method, doing the field research, and reporting the findings. So this actually takes going out and doing some field work on your own, some legwork. So selecting the topic, I'm going to create an example research topic that to kind of guide you through it. So number 1 being selecting the topic. Today I want to talk about how does gender influence our concern with our appearance, right? So I need to write a question that will reflect that type of concern or social problem, right? So for the purposes of this research, our question is going to be, does gender influence how concerned we are with our own reflection? So that is a nice question that you should be able to observe in a mini type of research project. I often do this on campus with people in class. So that question then leads us to how we're going to create our hypothesis. The difference between a hypothesis and a question is that it's a statement, remember, of how the world works, the how and why, right? So it has to be testable and it has to be a statement. So the way that I would write what we call an H of O, or a null hypothesis, notice here I'm clicking on this little button, and then I'm going to hit 0 and it makes it small. So, and then I click on it again to release it. And that's how you write null hypothesis. So your null hypothesis should be set up like that. For the purposes of this class, I think we can say, we can create this question as gender has no influence on our likelihood to look in a public mirror, because we're going to do this in public, when walking by. So it's a statement, and through observations we should be able to look at whether or not men or women are more likely to look in a public mirror when they're walking by. Now you're probably asking me, well, how do I do this? Why does this say gender as opposed to men or women? Because a null hypothesis is usually, a lot of people like to think about it as the opposite way of what we think is going to happen. So we probably think either men or women are going to be more likely to look in a public surface. So in general, you can have up to 6 or 7 hypotheses. So your null hypothesis is usually the statement of assumption, right? So we are looking at, we probably think, here's another way to do it. You can click on the 1. So we have an H of 1, or our first hypothesis, and we can write something like, women are more likely to look in a public mirror when walking by one. So as you can see, this is going to be focused on women, right? Now, we need to have the other one because it could also be men. We don't know which one, and we're supposed to be non-biased, if you remember. Now, don't forget, for many of you, the null hypothesis, the H of O, is going to be the most challenging. So what you probably want to do is start with what you think is going to happen, and then write the opposite of that. So basically the neutral of that. So we would have most of my class tends to think women are more likely to look in a public mirror when walking by one. But we also need to be concerned with men could also potentially be more likely to look in a public mirror when walking by one. The H of O then would be that there is no gender influence on the likelihood to look in a public mirror when walking by one. So now we have our hypothesis set up. So if you go back, you can see we've got number 1 and number 2, and here we have defined concepts. Now, I just added this because I didn't have it on your Blackboard assignment, so don't forget to add it. It's very important, and you need to label your independent and dependent variables. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So what are our concepts? The very first thing we need to do is figure out what our concepts are. So our concepts are what needs to be defined. Now, people are usually thinking, you know, that certain things are obvious, right? And one of the things people tend to believe is obvious is whether somebody is male or female, but that needs to be defined. It's very important. One of the things that you'll learn in this class is that sex or gender is not concrete. There are variables in between. As many people as you see that are walking around that are redhead are as many people that you see who are walking around who are what we call intersexed, somewhere between a male and a female. So when you define a concept for research purposes, you are defining for the purposes of that research what you are going to say a male is or a female is. And a lot of times what people will say, well, okay, so if they're biologically male, meaning their primary sexual organ is male or female, they have a penis or a vagina, then that's how we're gonna define them. But remember, you're doing observational research, and it would be highly inappropriate to look or even ask somebody what their primary genitalia is. And we are actually considering gender. So what we want to do is define these concepts in correlation with gender, so that we're looking at somebody who is representing themselves as a male or representing themselves as a female. So usually your secondary sexual characteristics, your dress, and how you want the world to perceive you, right? So what we would probably say is men are defined we include and exclude, and we give examples to make it clear so that even if 50 years from now or 100 years from now, or another culture, another, another time and place, anybody knows exactly what you mean when you say men. So including men who So I'd write including men who are transsexuals or transgenders, excluding all intersex people who I cannot visually define as male or female, and may not want to be categorized as one or the other, and therefore are not representing themselves as one sex or the other. So I expect you to do this on your own. I do not expect, and I do not want to see that you've typed exactly the same thing I have. So we have now done it for men. You should also do it for women and for gender. The second concept that we need to look at is looking. What do we mean by looking? So you will define the concept of looking very clearly. You give a definition, you include what you mean, and you exclude what you mean. Now you have to be careful. A lot of times people think, well, you need to stop and actually look. So, you actually make a concerted effort to stop in a reflective surface or a mirror, right? Which is our other concept that you need to define. Now, and for the purposes of this research, I think we need to define a mirror as any type of reflective surface that you would see in public. So often what we see in public is windows that you can see yourself in. And when we say look, most people are just actually glancing. So you need to include that all in your definition. It needs to be clear, concrete, and it needs to be obvious to the reader what you mean. So we have all these definitions. You're going to go ahead and do those on your own when you create your own. Now the next step is to identify our independent variable and our dependent variable. So what do we mean by independent variable and dependent variable? A dependent variable changes depending on the independent variable. So when we are talking about this hypothesis, looking at gender has no influence on our likelihood to look in a public mirror when walking by one, what is our independent variable and our dependent variable? So let me give you an example. I think I might have used this before when we talked about it. Our independent variable, if we have a hypothesis like, I think I used this one already, as temperature increases, so as it gets hotter outside, ice cream sales increase, right? So our dependent variable is ice cream sales, and our independent variable is temperature. Temperature doesn't change based on ice cream sales. Ice cream sales change based on temperature outside. The way I like to personalize it so that I can remember it is that I'm the independent variable in my relationship, and my husband's the dependent variable in our relationship. So if I'm in a bad mood, his mood changes. But if he's in a bad mood, my mood doesn't change. Now, when I told him this, he did not think this was correct, and he told me that I was fibbing to my students and that I should say it the other way around, that he's the independent variable and I'm the dependent variable. But anyways, I like to think about it that way. And it helps me remember which one's which. So in the case of this, it's not the gender that changes based on whether you look, but it's the looking that we think that changes based on whether or not what your gender is. So that is, gender is the independent variable, and looking is the dependent variable. And the way that you are going to show that you understand this for the purposes of this little research project is you're going to simply put IV or DV next to the word that you think is the independent variable and you think is the dependent variable in each version of your hypothesis. So now we have our hypothesis, we've defined our concepts, and we've labeled our independent and dependent variable. What is next? Choose your research method. Now remember, the research method is what you're going to do, how you're going to collect the data. Now, I've kind of chosen for you. I've told you you're going to do observational research, which you don't normally know your method before you choose your you don't normally know your method before you know what your question is. It's not the appropriate way to go about doing it, but for the purposes of this class and being able to do this little project, I've kind of chosen for you. So you know you're doing observational research, right? But you're going to have to say it. You're going to have to spell it out. I'm going to be doing observational research. I'm going to be doing it at Fullerton College between 12 and 12:30 p.m. I'm going to stand in the courtyard in front of this building facing this direction, and I'm going to write on a piece of paper how many men I see that look in the reflective surface and how many women I see that look in the reflective surface as they walk by, and I'm going to record them. So you are going to, sorry, that was my bracelet falling off. You are going to spell out exactly how you're going to do the project, right? And that has to be written out in detail. It's going to be future tense. Now, this is what kind of confuses some people sometimes. So you have your method explained, what you're going to do, and then you have your field research. So this is the part where you are actually going to go out into the field, in this case, going to Fullerton College, the way that I've described it, right, and collect the data. So you go out to Fullerton College and say, now I want you to limit your observation time to somewhere between like 7 and 12 minutes. I don't want you to do too long of an observation time. It doesn't sound like a lot, but trying to observe for that long is pretty challenging. You can also limit your observation time to, and limit your observation space. So smaller spaces are better and shorter times when you're first practicing that, this type of field research for the first time. So a small coffee shop, or don't try to do a whole end of a mall or anything. You can't see and hear and record that many things at once, right? A small coffee shop or a liquor store or a corner of a street or whatever it is you decide, but you have to say where you're going and what you're going to do. And then you go out and do it. Now, there's two things that you need. You need to take a picture and post it. You want to copy and paste your picture into your Word document in this section. And you also need to copy and paste a picture of your field notes into the section. That is showing me you actually went out and did this research project. So now we're going to do something similar. We're going to explain our methods again, but this time, this method section is in the past tense. It's what I did. Now, obviously, you might have the intentions of getting there at noon and starting at 12:05 and ending at 12:10, but say you don't get there till 12:30. You don't change what you say you're going to do. You change your field research notes. So I got there at 12:33. I set up. I took my pictures, and then I started at 12:40. And then then you have your picture of what you recorded. I ended at this time. This is what the location looked like. This is what happened, that kind of thing. So you're recording your results and everything. So this one is past tense, right? You actually go out and do the field research, and you're showing me what you did. Finally, we have report our findings and share our results. So in terms of reporting our findings and sharing our results, this is your write-up. The whole thing is actually sharing your results, right? And reporting our findings. So you have your data. You know how many people you saw. You might tally them up. A good way to do it, think about it. If you have 10 men and 10 women, you can say there were more men or more women. But that's not how the world works. You probably have 23 men walk by and 17 women walk by. Now, what you can do to compare apples to apples is you can turn it into a percentage, and then you can say the percentage of men who walked by were more likely to look in the mirror than the percentage of women who walked by. Now, you have the three main paradigms: social conflict paradigm, structural functional paradigm, and social interaction paradigm. you want to try to interpret the results of your research through one of those three paradigms. So you talk about it in that language. So you show that you understand one of the theories by describing what happened, reporting your findings, your summation, your total, your numbers, and then giving your analysis as to why you think that happened. Now, it's not your personal opinion. Be careful. Don't tell me why you personally think it happened. Tell me why, from the conflict perspective, this happened, or from the structural functional perspective, this happened, or from the social interaction perspective, this happened. Now, that means that you're going to try to fumble your way through one of these theories that you don't understand that well. I'm expecting that. I don't expect perfection. I just expect you to try. So this is kind of your setup. Remember, very important, that even though this doesn't have to be in complete paragraph form, we have our question, we have our hypothesis. You can label it that way. Follow this kind of format, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so I know what you're doing. You can title it, select topic, and then give me your question, hypothesis, then give me your hypothesis, research method, do that, and then the field research, have that, and then findings, and then you can have that. Don't forget, you need to follow the correct format, which you can find under the content section in Blackboard. And if you don't follow the appropriate content section and have everything that you're supposed to have, it does result in lost points, and you don't want that. Finally, the next slide. Under Blackboard, you will find quiz number 1. It will open and it will close. Both of these will close when the next following week's assignments come up. So, good luck. Do a great job on your project. I hope you have fun doing your very first mini research project. Thank you.